It's a style known to everyone, recognizable at a glance. This picture, painted around 100 years ago, looked like nothing that had ever been painted. The Young Ladies of Avignon, dated 1907, was to change art forever. It's now considered as the starting point of modern art. This painting was the work of a 25-year-old artist, Pablo, a Spanish immigrant who had arrived in Paris a few years earlier with no money and speaking hardly any French. It's this development that we're going to explore, the journey from youth of an exceptionally gifted artist, and how this young man from the depths of Spain was to become this brilliant painter, the most famous in the world, an icon of the 20th century. When Pablo became Picasso.
I have something to tell you.
On the 25th of October 1881, a baby of just 10 days old was baptized according to strict Catholic tradition in the church of Santiago al Mayor in Malaga, in southern Spain. His baptismal name was Pablo Diego José Francisco de Paula, María de los Remedios Cipriano de la Santísima Trinidad. He was to become known as Pablo Picasso. He was the eldest son of José Ruiz Blasco and María Picasso y López. The Ruiz Picasso family belonged to the traditional Andalusian middle class in Malaga, a sleepy city on the sunny southern coast of Spain. Pablo grew up in the heart of the old town, at number 36, Plaza de la Marcado, in the family's pleasant apartment. Pablo, as the eldest son, was at the center of family life from his earliest years. He was pampered by his mother and admired by his two younger sisters, Lola and Concepcion. The first thing that struck his family was the intensity of his gaze.
Un petit visage avec des yeux noirs énormes qui dévore le visage et qui déjà regarde fixement le spectateur. Donc déjà un petit être sûr de lui au fond, un séducteur aussi qui enjôle son monde de femme.
Throughout his childhood, little Pablo grew up admiring his father Don José. He wanted to follow in his footsteps as a painter and even to surpass him.
On sait que ça va être un modèle capital pour Picasso, d'abord parce que c'est son père qui va lui transmettre son art.
Little Pablo spent his time in Don José's studio, among the brushes and tubes of paint. He would spend hours watching his father paint his canvases. Don José specialized in a somewhat surprising subject, pigeons. Art for dining rooms and highly prized by the middle classes of Malaga. Quite naturally, as he observed his father perfecting the plumage of his pigeons, Pablo started drawing. More than for any other child, drawing would become his life's passion.
On le trouve dessinant tout de suite. Les souvenirs de la famille, il dessine.
From the age of 5, Pablo drew compulsively. He drew anywhere, on anything, and only agreed to go to school on condition that he was allowed to draw. He filled his books with caricatures and sketches, as if he wanted to transform the world through his drawings.
Il croque tout ce qu'il voit, ses proches, des gens dans la rue. Tout devient art, en fait, chez Picasso, très très vite.
Apparemment, il a vraiment une pulsion, quoi. Il faut tout le temps qu'il y soit, quoi. Donc, il a ce truc, il a le feu sacré, et il a le feu sacré très tôt. Il a le talent et le feu sacré.
He was always looking for new challenges to impress people. Drawing a donkey with a single line starting from one leg, or a dog ending with the tail.
À partir du moment où quelque chose fascine son regard, même s'il ne sait pas ce qu'il va en faire, mais qu'il pénètre son regard, vraiment quand c'est très fort, il est dedans. Et le monde extérieur n'existe plus à moins qu'on le lui rappelle.
Un enfant doué, surdoué, et on voit très bien les qualités premières aussi de son dessin, la grande virtuosité, un trait extrêmement rapide, un don en fait, véritablement un don extraordinaire.
Aware of his son's abilities in drawing and convinced he could become a great painter, Don José took Pablo under his wing and educated him in academic techniques. Don José was an aficionado, a fanatic of bullfighting. He regularly took Pablo to the local bull ring. Bullfighting was to become a recurrent theme in his painting lessons.
Picasso a été très suivi, motivé, poussé par son père qui sans doute envisageait pour son fils une carrière de peintre académique virtuose. Et donc oui, il y a eu un investissement, il y a eu une attention portée sur sa formation.
From his early years, Pablo drew bullfighting scenes, like this one when he was not yet 8 years old. His pencil strokes were quick, very different from the more laboured efforts of a child of that age. He wasn't afraid to sketch the crowd in outline in order to concentrate on the fight going on in the ring. Pablo painted his first oil painting in his father's studio. He was 8.5 years old when he painted The Little Yellow Picador. Pablo's brushstrokes certainly were as yet unsure, but his gaze showed remarkable precociousness.
Ce qui chez lui est stupéfiant, c'est qu'enfin, il se pose déjà des problèmes picturaux qui sont à son âge. Vous n'avez qu'à regarder l'architecture, les interrogations sur les visages, etc. Enfant, il se pose des problèmes devant ce qu'il peint qu'aucun enfant ne se poserait.
Le bon professeur, il dirait ça. Alors, je ne sais pas si le père avait ce type de réaction, de dire, bon, faut encore travailler, Coco, mais tu as du tempérament, là, il y a un peintre, quoi.
Don José judged his young pupil's technique to be very promising. But did he realize that his precociousness wasn't just in his technique? Did he notice that Pablo had a very personal perception of the world around him? Pablo was 9 years old. He was still a very young child, but he often set off alone for long walks across Malaga. They always took him to the old castle of Gibralfaro, which dominated the town. There he discovered a world far removed from the middle-class society he lived in, the world of the gypsies.
Très vite, ce qu'il voit, c'est quand même le monde gitan. Ça l'accroche et ça va l'intéresser très vite. Je pense que c'est la première fois qu'il voit un autre monde qui est un monde, je dirais entre guillemets, sauvage. Hein.
The gypsies were poor people excluded from society, outcasts whom he saw begging outside the cathedral in Malaga.
Les gitans, c'est quand même les autres qui sont pas fréquentables, mais qui sont fascinants parce que c'est la musique, parce que c'est tout un pan du passé de l'Espagne qui est à la fois refusé et terriblement présent et fascinant. c'est un autre monde. Hein. C'est ça qu'on va voir tout le temps avec Picasso, hein, dans la vie de Picasso, c'est-à-dire que y a un ailleurs.
Another place, far away from his father's middle-class academic world. A place populated with symbolic figures who would later come into his art. Pablo's emancipation was hastened when the Ruiz Picasso family suddenly had to leave Malaga. Don José was earning very little as an artist, so in 1891, financial problems forced him to take a better-paid job as a drawing teacher at the other end of Spain, in La Coruña, right in the north. Pablo was 10 when he arrived with his family in this austere town on the Atlantic coast. The culture shock was brutal.
La Corogne, c'est une ville de Galice qui est très pluvieuse, avec un habitat très resserré. C'est véritablement une atmosphère beaucoup plus fermée.
Imaginez que vous vivez à Marseille et que vous partez à Mulhouse. Il change de monde, il change un peu de culture, d'espace, de paysage.
Donc c'est plutôt des années qui sont associées dans la vie du père de Picasso et même de l'adolescent qu'il était à une forme de mélancolie.
In La Coruña, in this new land without sun, without bullfighting and without friends, Don José became depressed and spent most of his days watching the rain. Helpless, Pablo watched the psychological collapse of his role model. To escape from the sad sight, he took refuge in drawing. Unlike Don José, Pablo was rather stimulated by this new face of Spain and by the spectacular landscapes of the wild coast. During the years he spent in La Coruña, Pablo's production was remarkable, abundant and varied. Pablo was 11 when he drew these pigeons. His progress was such that they could easily be confused with those painted by Don José. Pupil and teacher are now on an equal footing. It was in the execution of the figure of a pigeon that Pablo unintentionally was to undermine his father. The transfer of power from father to son was only a question of time. It took place 3 years later. One evening, Don José asked Pablo to finish one of his pigeon paintings. Pablo was 14 years old. As usual, he carried out the task incredibly quickly and with a steady hand. Don José was stunned by his son's undoubted mastery, but he also realized that his life as a painter was a failure. He knew then that he would never belong to the important artistic circles of Spain. So in a solemn gesture, he gave his palette, brushes and paints to Pablo.
Il lui a transmis d'une certaine façon la peinture et peut-être en se disant que le fils allait réussir ce que lui n'avait pas réussi. Donc je pense que là, il lui transmet cela. Alors, soit avec le geste de la transmission d'une palette, dire bon écoute, t'es trop bon, moi j'arrête, soit simplement en lui disant bah écoute, vas-y toi tu peux y aller. Tu as 14 ans, tu peux te consacrer à la peinture.
In a twist of fate, Don José rapidly picked himself up. He finally obtained the post he had wanted for a long time as a teacher of drawing at Tinha, the School of Art in Barcelona. Cheered by this happy news, Don José's only preoccupation was to help his son become a great academic painter, and he would do everything he could. In April 1895, the whole Ruiz Picasso family moved to Barcelona, the largest city in Catalonia. Of course, Don José immediately enrolled Pablo at the prestigious School of Art where he himself taught. That way, he could closely monitor his son's education, and he constantly pushed him to excel. Pablo was just 14 years old when he attended his first drawing class. He was the youngest there, with his classmates being generally 5 or 6 years older than him, and yet he was the most talented.
Il est, malgré sa jeunesse, celui qui domine tous les autres d'entrée de jeu, respecté aussi pour ça, respecté aussi pour sa façon déjà d'avaler tous les styles, les maîtres du passé, de les cannibaliser, dirait-on aujourd'hui, pour les transformer en œuvres de Picasso.
Pablo's progress was so dazzling that by the end of his first year, he had no more to learn from his studio studies. For Don José, there was no time to lose. In order to become known, Pablo had to present an ambitious work in a salon where the important artists in Spain exhibited.
Il faut que tu fasses quand même un vrai tableau de salon, quoi, donc une scène, figure, un truc posé, un truc sérieux, et il faut un sujet.
In 1896, he produced his first official painting. It was a huge canvas, a real tour de force for such a young boy. Father and son had chosen the subject together, the First Communion. Pablo was just 15 when he signed this first painting, Pablo Ruiz Picasso, using the names of his father and his mother.
On reconnaît le père avec sa barbe rousse, son air austère, mélancolique, introverti. Dans toutes les premières grandes compositions, il est présent. Dans les dessins aussi du jeune Picasso, on voit constamment la figure du père, qui de peintre est devenu modèle de son propre fils. Donc c'est une situation freudienne en quelque sorte, un peu ambiguë.
In any case, his father, the model, found this first attempt at exhibition painting to his taste. In July 1896, Pablo returned to Malaga as a hero. The whole Ruiz Picasso family was there. Parents, uncles, godfathers and cousins all came together to support the young artistic prodigy. Pablo had never been so proud, and his esteem was to be heightened even more when he achieved something no other apprenticed artist in Spain ever had. In 1897, to reward the extraordinary quality of his academic work at the age of just 15, Pablo received a Medal of Honor at the National Exhibition of Fine Art.
C'est un tour de force, puis ça n'existe pas, un gosse de 15 ans qui expose dans ce genre de salon, ce genre de tableau. Ce qui est formidable, c'est qu'il est reconnu par les autres peintres, comme ça.
The Spanish academic artists recognized the young Pablo as one of their own. He had reached a level that they had only achieved after several decades of effort. He was a prodigy of the kind you see once in 100 years. For Don José, his son's career was already assured.
Il sait tout faire en dessin et en peinture. Donc il peut faire la grande peinture religieuse, il peut faire les grands portraits, et pourquoi pas aller peindre le roi et faire son Velázquez et son Goya, et avoir ensuite ses tableaux au Prado et être le grand peintre de cour. Pourquoi pas? Il a ça dans les mains.
But Don José was far from imagining that his son was already tired of academic painting. At 16 years old, in the face of general incomprehension, Pablo wanted to move away from it towards other more exciting paths.
Pour un jeune artiste doué mais en même temps curieux et intelligent, il paraissait évident qu'il n'allait pas rester et s'ancrer dans l'académisme. Il est parti sans doute également pour mettre un peu de distance avec son père, dont le poids devait être un peu pesant, enfin un peu trop fort sur un jeune artiste qui a besoin de trouver sa propre voie.
Ce peintre-là avait une technique académique que personne d'autre n'avait. Et ce qu'il a décidé justement, c'est de désapprendre. Et je pense que c'est ça qui est justement intéressant chez Picasso, c'est qu'il y a toujours ce double mouvement, apprentissage, désapprentissage.
Pablo was still a teenager when he turned his back on academic art for good. He wanted to find another kind of art. A great artist was in gestation. Pablo was 18 years old and living in Barcelona, away from his father's supervision, but with no money, as Don José had cut off his allowance. He hung around with a group of friends who were also former art students. One of them was Carlos Casagemas, the romantic figure in the group and his best friend. The young artists were rebels. They needed to renounce everything they'd learned and everything that made them, their family values, their art education. With these friends, Pablo was seeking a new path for his painting.
C'est quand même un chercheur, c'est quelqu'un qui tente d'inventer un nouveau langage, qui est très curieux de tout et qui voit ce qui se passe autour de lui.
Il est complètement immergé dans la vie de bohème de Barcelone. Vous savez qu'on avait surnommé la cité des merveilles à cette époque à cause de cette effervescence, fin de siècle, cette culture moderniste.
At the end of the 19th century, Barcelona was a town in intellectual and artistic ferment. In the evenings, the group took interminable trips across the lively Barrio Chino, visiting trendy bars and also the brothels in Avignon Street, which means Avignon in Catalan. Don José was devastated by Pablo's behavior.
Je lui ai dit, voilà, mon fils, il a dans les mains de quoi faire une belle carrière de peintre. Il peut devenir le grand peintre classique de sa génération. Et puis, il va se perdre sans un rond dans la bohème de Barcelone, où on voit des peintres sympathiques, intéressants, mais qui tirent le diable par la queue.
In fact, with his new friends, Pablo was opening his eyes to his age and its modernity. The merry group often ended their evening forays at the El Quatre Gats Cabaret, the meeting place for the artistic avant-garde in Barcelona.
Donc c'est une taverne où on peut se retrouver, où on mange et on boit pour quelques sous. Et c'est un lieu, c'est aussi une sorte de cercle intellectuel où on échange des idées.
Here, Pablo met a world of avant-garde artists, like the cartoonist Ricardo Opisso, who drew him surrounded by his friends. These were modern artists, with their sights fixed on Paris, then the centre of the art world. Through his contact with them, Pablo would completely change his view of painting.
Ses copains lui ont fait comprendre qu'il se passait autre chose, en peinture, que la peinture était en train de changer à Paris et à Munich et que ce que faisait Toulouse-Lautrec, c'était autre chose, c'était beaucoup plus intéressant que ce qu'on lui apprenait à faire et qu'il n'allait pas faire des premières communions et des sciences et charités toute sa vie.
It was evident to Pablo that if Paris was where modern art was happening, he had to go to Paris. In October 1900, with his friend Carlos Casagemas, Pablo left Barcelona for the City of Light. That day, he finally turned his back on what his father, a 19th century man, wanted to make him into. Don José could do nothing. By entering the 20th century with its modernity, Pablo was breaking the last link that connected them. Pablo Ruiz Picasso arrived in Paris on the day of his 19th birthday. The atmosphere he discovered in the French capital was truly indescribable. The City of Light was invaded by 50 million visitors from all over the world.
C'est la folie dans Paris parce que c'est l'expo universelle de 1900 et qui est quelque chose qu'on a du mal à se figurer aujourd'hui parce que tout Paris est reconstruit.
To accommodate the crowds, the first metro line had just opened. There was also a moving walkway to carry visitors along the Seine. Its banks were full of hundreds of pavilions in the colours of every country.
Et donc c'est comme une sorte de parc d'attractions géant. Donc il arrive et il est complètement sidéré.
Pablo and his friend Casagemas were dazzled. Even though he was a recognized painter in Spain, the young Pablo Ruiz Picasso was quite unknown in the capital of the arts. He didn't speak a word of French and found it very hard to learn. But Pablo wasn't intimidated because he'd come to see the art of the great French masters he'd heard so much about in Barcelona.
Quand on vient à Paris et qu'on est artiste à la fin du 19e siècle et au début du 20e siècle, c'est pour réussir, pour être justement reconnu et parce que c'est vraiment le cœur même de ce qui se fait de mieux.
One of the major attractions of the World Fair was the Grand Palais. Opened for the event, it housed a huge exhibition tracing 100 years of French art, and all the great masters were there. Rodin, Toulouse-Lautrec, Cézanne, Renoir, Van Gogh. Pablo was overwhelmed at the sight of this brightly coloured exhibition, as he had only seen these masterpieces in poor black and white reproductions. Even though he revered all these great artists, he only had a single idea in mind: to measure himself against them. And he was convinced that he, Pablo Ruiz Picasso, could do better.
C'est un type qui a une volonté de faire. Une volonté de faire, une ambition très grande et une confiance en lui totale de ce qu'il va faire.
Il a une ambition débordante de devenir le plus grand artiste de tous les temps.
Et donc, il va, avec la mémoire visuelle extraordinaire qu'il avait, sa virtuosité aussi extraordinaire, sa capacité à attraper tous les styles, ça va être une leçon formidable pour lui, et on sait ce qu'il va en faire, puisque très vite, sa carrière, son œuvre, aussi bien peinte que sculptée, va en être transformée.
To conquer Paris, Pablo had identified the area where he should live: Montmartre. It was the gathering place of painters and artistic bohemians. He and his friend Casagemas moved into 49 Rue Gabrielle. They joined a small community of penniless Catalan artists in a studio. Pablo had only just arrived when he was noticed by Pedro Manach. He was the art dealer who sold the paintings of the Catalan artists in Montmartre. Manach immediately noticed the skill in Pablo's paintings. He thought he could easily sell them. For an income of 150 francs per month, a workman's wages, Pablo had to supply him with paintings on demand. It was extraordinary good luck for the young ambitious painter who was newly arrived in Paris, but could already make a living from his art. Pablo became intoxicated on the great spirit of partying and debauchery that reigned in the French capital. He and his friend Casagemas spent their evenings in the cafes and cabarets of the Boulevard de Clichy or at the Moulin de la Galette on the Butte de Montmartre. In this party atmosphere, he met the girls on Montmartre, liberated girls of easy virtue. These dancers and waitresses were sometimes models, but more often lovers of the bohemian artists.
Il connaît rien, ni de l'amour, ni des femmes, surtout il n'a jamais vu par exemple des gens qui s'embrassent dans la rue. Ils sont complètement fous quoi, de pouvoir avoir une maîtresse aussi facilement, que la vie soit si facile, qu'elle coûte pas cher. Ils vont vivre de peinture et une sorte d'orgie idéale.
Pablo and Casagemas were not yet 20 when they threw themselves headlong into this life of pleasure where everything seemed possible, but without assessing the risks. Casagemas developed a violent passion for Germaine Gargalot. She was a laundry girl who also posed for artists in the neighbourhood. The young romantic artist lovingly drew the muse who occupied his every thought. But the young couple grew apart. Rows became a daily event, and Pablo saw his friend gradually sink into alcoholism.
Casagemas avait une relation aux femmes qui était difficile et compliquée, à fleur de peau. En fait, il ne pouvait pas avoir de rapport sexuel avec cette femme. Donc cette femme le considérait comme une espèce de moins que rien. Et lui, mort de honte, ne pouvait en parler à personne.
Casagemas didn't realize it, but Germaine was greatly attracted to Pablo.
C'est un séducteur qui n'est pas non plus, qui a une certaine autonomie et qui a un rapport plus dominant aux femmes. Et Germaine va aller vers Picasso. Donc il va y avoir une sorte d'infidélité, je dirais, de la part de Germaine, mais également de la part de Picasso vis-à-vis de son ami. Et cette, je dirais, cette sorte de trio amoureux qui aurait pu être juste une pièce de boulevard, en fait, a fini tragiquement.
On the evening of the 17th of February 1901, Casagemas, defeated, invited all his friends to dinner in a restaurant near the Place Clichy. Picasso was absent since he was visiting friends in Barcelona.
donc là, il sort de sa poche un revolver et il dit puisque Germaine ne veut pas de moi, et ben la vie ne vaut rien.
Then Casagemas rose from the table and shot himself in the head in front of Germaine and the whole gathering. Pablo heard the news on his return from Spain. Strangely, he seemed unconcerned. And then at the same time, his agent Pedro Manach told him some incredible news. He had just secured him an exhibition with gallery owner Ambroise Vollard, Renoir and Cézanne's dealer. Pablo was absolutely unprepared for such an event, so he threw himself headlong into his work. In just 1 month, he was to deliver around 60 canvases.
On a la plus grande partie de ces toiles-là qui sont pour le coup des hyper inspirées de Lautrec, qui n'ont pas une grande originalité et qui fait à la chaîne.
On the 25th of June 1901, the Ambroise Vollard Gallery in Rue Lafitte in the 9th arrondissement of Paris held the first exhibition of Pablo's works, a 19-year-old Spanish artist as yet unknown to the public. The young painter's self-portrait proudly welcomed the visitors. Pablo's painting had completely changed. It had become sunny, dazzling in its craftsmanship, and its influences were many. Toulouse-Lautrec, but also Van Gogh. This self-portrait is entitled Yo, Picasso, I, Picasso. From then on, Ruiz, his father's name, would no longer appear. He had found his signature, and Picasso was to be his professional name.
Il signe Picasso, le nom de sa mère. Et c'est en même temps son évasion, la conscience de sa personnalité.
Moi, Picasso, ça en dit long quand même sur une sorte d'ego triomphant. Il se retourne vers nous, vers le spectateur, dans une espèce de pose de défi. Ça veut dire que moi, Picasso, je sais ce que je vaux finalement.
C'est vraiment envoyer un coup de poing par la peinture.
The exhibition was a success. He sold several paintings, but more importantly, the press carried their first articles about him, calling him the Little Goya. To celebrate this triumphant arrival on the Paris scene, Pablo proudly posed for a photograph in a velvet suit, surrounded by his courtiers. He had never looked so triumphant and self-confident, but that character was soon to break apart. Six months later, in the autumn of 1901, once the enthusiasm of the Vollard exhibition had died down, the face of Casagemas returned to haunt Pablo. The image of his dead friend forced itself on him and took on a dimension bordering on obsession.
Tout d'un coup, il a une image de son ami mort qui ressurgit et il se met à le peindre.
Pablo was just 20 when he painted his friend on his deathbed with the mark of the bullet on his temple. There's no doubt that this was one of Pablo Picasso's most personal and unclassifiable works. He kept the painting himself and only revealed its existence 50 years later.
La peinture de mort peut être clinique. C'est un cadavre, tandis que là c'est le deuil de son ami. C'est intime. Pour moi, c'est pas un mort, c'est Casagemas mort, mon ami mort.
Pablo was riddled with guilt and broke up with Germaine for good.
Cette mort de Casagemas qui sera un des fils conducteurs de la peinture de Picasso jusqu'à la fin. C'est-à-dire que la présence de la mort est quand même est fondamentale dans son œuvre. Et je dirais le sentiment de la mort mêlé au désir amoureux, mêlé à la sexualité. On a l'impression que les choses se nouent à ce moment-là. C'est là où il va y avoir vraiment une rupture. Donc Picasso, il a 20 ans maintenant. Et il va arrêter totalement la peinture facile et il va se mettre à faire une peinture
hanté par la mort.
The blaze of colour was over. Pablo's painting became blue, only blue. Through this melancholic veil of blue, Pablo now looked at the other side of the Belle Époque. The underside of Paris, the city of pleasures which had consumed Cartagena. A crepuscular blue light spread over people and things, the winding streets, the flaking facades of the grey houses. For Pablo, painting should no longer linger on the picturesque or the anecdotal. It should seek the truth of human nature. His painting from then on would focus on the faces of those in poverty, the beggars, these deprived people whose future seemed without hope.
C'est une période anti-commerciale dans laquelle Picasso va s'enfermer pendant plus de 3 ans sans réussir à vendre. Il vend quelques toiles, mais très peu.
Pedro Magnac, the dealer, was troubled by his protégé's development. This blue monochrome appalled him. Even his Catalan friends were worried to see him persist in this gloomy, unsellable painting.
Tout d'un coup, tout le monde se détourne de lui. C'est-à-dire que Magnac lui dit « mais ça va pas, mais qu'est-ce qui te prend ciao ». Donc il a plus de marchands et donc plus aucun moyen de vivre.
Il y a quand même des moments où on sait à Paris qu'il n'a pas de quoi se nourrir. Enfin, il y a une anecdote, on raconte qu'à un moment, il serait allé piquer un morceau de pain dans l'atelier d'un copain. Enfin, bon, c'est quand même une vie de bohème très, très, très dure. Donc, je pense qu'il a un moment là de flottement très difficile. Est-ce qu'il faut rentrer à Barcelone de temps en temps pour se faire un peu nourrir par la famille, essayer de faire... Bon, est-ce que j'insiste à Paris ou non? Qu'est-ce que je vais faire?
At the age of 21 and broke, Pablo was forced to return to Barcelona to live off his family. It was an admission of failure. Don José judged that his son was living the life of a good-for-nothing layabout and that he had no chance of earning a living with the painting he was doing. Pablo was totally lost.
Il cherche sa peinture. Entre 20 ans et 24 ans, c'est normal. Il y en a beaucoup, c'est entre 40 et 45 qui sont encore en train de chercher des peintres, même des grands peintres et tout. Il y a une certaine naïveté d'enfant qui a grandi trop vite aussi, d'une certaine façon.
Pablo reflected on what he was, on the meaning of his existence. And it was in a great painting that he was to find the first hints of an answer. In 1903, in a small studio he rented in Barcelona, Pablo painted La Vie. He was 22 years old. In this allegorical and very moral composition, Pablo returned to the tragedy that had distressed him so much. He placed Germaine in the arms of Casagemas, and opposite them represented the child they might have had together.
C'est une sorte de transfiguration de ce que serait donc une projection d'un couple avec un enfant. C'est une sorte de fantasme de ce qu'aurait dû être la vie de Casagemas. On peut y voir une certaine forme de culpabilité, mais aussi une forme d'amour pour ce compagnon, une sorte de regret infini devant cette vie qui a été, qui s'est finie dramatiquement.
When he finished this composition, Pablo was able to close the darkest chapter of his life. He was able to leave behind him his years of doubt and return to his career. He wanted to show everyone what he was capable of. So, in April 1904, Pablo Picasso moved back to Paris for good. He was then 22 years old. In just 3 years, he was to revolutionize painting by producing a work that would make him the most important artist of his generation. The Picasso Revolution was about to start. Pablo Picasso moved back to the heart of Montmartre to a place which was a real artistic institution, the Bateau Lavoir.
Le Bateau Lavoir, c'est une ancienne manufacture de piano qui a été baptisée Bateau Lavoir parce qu'il ressemblait à ces bateaux à fond plat sur lesquels les lavandières lavaient le linge. Fait de planches de bois qui étaient glacées l'hiver, très très chaud l'été, mais qui coûtaient rien.
Pablo Picasso moved into a studio in this dilapidated building. He was there with 15 other artists, mostly Catalan, who like him were trying to make a name for themselves as artists. But in this world of poverty, Pablo Picasso was to experience the happiest and most productive period of his youth. There, one day, he caught someone's eye. Her name was Fernande Olivier, and she was a professional model. She was 22, like him.
Dès le premier regard qu'il jette sur Fernande, tombe fou amoureux en fait. Et il va lui faire une cour inlassable qui sera couronnée de succès un jour d'orage.
That evening, Fernande ran as fast as she could to shelter in the Bateau Lavoir. Pablo was waiting for her inside.
Elle est là, toute trempée et tout, et qui lui dit « Tu vas venir voir mon atelier ». Et là, elle a un choc.
Fernande was used to artist studios, but Pablo's was like no other.
Un bordel, un foutoir d'enfer. Il y a un poêle, des toiles partout par terre.
Il y a du charbon en fait qui est complètement fossilisé à côté, une espèce de pile de charbon. Il y a des mégots par terre, des bouts de journaux, des boîtes de sardines. Enfin, c'est pas très propre en fait.
Fernande was to spend several years living in this incredible mess with Pablo. With her, his painting was transformed. Colours returned to the canvas. A circle of friends formed around the young bohemian couple. Among them was the poet Max Jacob, one of the characters of Montmartre. He taught Pablo French by reading Paul Verlaine's poetry to him. The poet and art critic Guillaume Apollinaire, an unfailing supporter of Picasso, also made frequent visits to the studio.
Vous avez à la fois un foisonnement d'amitié et en même temps un foisonnement artistique. Et ça, c'est quelque chose d'absolument formidable. C'est-à-dire, la force de tout cela, c'est qu'ils savent que ce sont des grands génies. Ils savent qu'ils vont bouleverser le monde. Ça leur permet d'accepter la misère quotidienne qui est la leur.
But in November 1904, Providence came through the door of the wretched studio in the Bateau Lavoir. She was 30 years old, and her name was Gertrude Stein. She was an American heiress from a very wealthy family. She and her brother Leo were building up the largest collection of avant-garde paintings. A few days earlier, at a dealer's, Gertrude stood before a painting by Pablo. Seduced, this upper-class woman from the left bank went all the way to the Bateau Lavoir without warning and bought about 10 paintings for the sum of 800 francs. It was a small fortune for Pablo.
La rencontre avec Gertrude et Leo Stein va complètement changer la vie matérielle de Picasso, parce qu'après les avoir rencontrés, il n'aura plus jamais aucun problème financier.
Pablo was struck and thrown off balance by the force of this most unusual figure who had just come into his life.
Elle, c'est une grosse nana, elle est homosexuelle, elle ne s'en cache absolument pas. Elle a des sandales de mec, elle est assez imposante.
Pablo, guided by his ambition, knew he was in the presence of the person who could change his life. It was an opportunity not to be missed. He offered to paint Gertrude Stein's portrait, and she accepted. Every day, Gertrude Stein left her chic quarter and travelled across Paris to pose at the Bateau Lavoir. For the first time in his life, Pablo was very unsettled by his model and couldn't find the way to represent her face in spite of the long and repetitive sittings.
Ce défi que posait ce visage, peu à peu est devenu une sorte de point de fixation.
Il ne peut pas représenter cette femme comme il a peint les autres femmes. Il n'est pas là face à une amoureuse, il n'est pas là face à un modèle féminin classique. Son homosexualité, qui pour lui, qui est un dévorateur de femmes, devait apparaître comme une énigme.
How could he paint this unusual face? Pablo sought inspiration in narcotics. One night, he had a very disturbing opiate dream. It signaled the starting point of a revolution.
Picasso, une nuit d'opium, dans un délire, va dire je suis totalement fini, on a inventé la photographie. Mais en fait, c'est le début d'une grande réflexion qu'ont tous les peintres contemporains à cette époque. La photographie, elle peint le détail. Donc le peintre, il n'a plus à peindre ni le détail, ni surtout l'instant.
Le naturalisme ne pouvait pas exprimer l'intelligence et l'acuité, je dirais, de l'expression du visage de Gertrude Stein. Il lui fallait inventer une autre manière de peindre.
Voilà, c'est ça, vraiment cette conscience-là qui va faire naître la modernité. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut faire autre chose.
Pablo was 24 when he decided to start again from scratch to restructure his painting. On the 11th of May 1906, he left Gertrude Stein's portrait unfinished and went with Fernand to Spain. He took her to Gossol, a small village high in the mountains of the Catalan hinterland, which a friend had recommended. It was here, in the raw, natural environment, in this archaic rural world, that Pablo was to find new energy and new inspiration. Pablo took long walks alone across this arid landscape. The earth on the stony ground was the colour of ochre. This ochre was to take a permanent place in his palette of colours.
Puis il voit des gens et il est bien. Il est bien avec les paysans, il est bien avec les bûcherons, des gens très physiques, très réels dans la nature. Mais c'est une nature qui est profonde, qui est ancienne, qui est liée à l'histoire, à l'archaïque, au mythe.
Pablo made the real discovery which influenced his painting by accident when he entered the church in Gossol. He noticed a small archaic statue from the 12th century in an alcove on the left. It was the Virgin and Child, the Virgin of Gossol. Pablo was overwhelmed by the purity of its face, and above all by the magnetism of its empty gaze, so simple and yet seeming to be fixed in an eternity. In this strange, enigmatic mask, Pablo found a new path for his painting. In autumn 1906, back at the Bateau Lavoie, Pablo finished his painting. The portrait of Gertrude Stein, but without her. Under his brush strokes, Gertrude's face took on a geometric appearance. It was taken back to a sketch, that of an almost impersonal mask. The gaze was absent, without emotion. Pablo presented this enigmatic portrait to his model, Gertrude Stein.
Elle dit mes portraits ne me ressemblent pas tellement. Elle en est contente, mais bon, elle mesure qu'il y a quand même une représentation un peu distanciée de son visage.
Picasso va dire tu vas finir par ressembler à ce tableau. Et sous-entendu, si tu réussis ta mission qui est d'être la papesse de l'art moderne, tu vas finir par ressembler à ce tableau.
Et c'est absolument juste. C'est-à-dire que le portrait de Gertrude Stein est devenu, comment dire, l'effigie éternelle de cet écrivain.
In painting this icon in this manner, Pablo Picasso had invented a new way of capturing a portrait on canvas, freed from a realism that could be left to photography. Gertrude Stein quickly understood this and hung it on the wall of her salon as a major item in her collection. Pablo Picasso was only just 25 and his painting was hanging alongside the great masters, Renoir, Degas, Manet, Cézanne, and also a certain Henri Matisse. Thanks to this unique collection, the Stein salon was the most fashionable place in all of Paris.
Tous les samedis soirs, ils accueillaient les artistes, les écrivains qui étaient recommandés. Donc, il suffisait d'être recommandé par quelqu'un pour pouvoir être introduit dans le salon de la rue de Fleurus.
It was in this legendary place that the meeting between the young, ambitious painter Picasso and the master of the avant-garde Matisse would take place. It was a confrontation between two concepts of painting. Matisse, an established middle-class figure, then aged 37, thought that art was a matter of harmony and poetry. But for Picasso, the young bohemian, painting had to be a shock for the person viewing it.
À partir du moment où le face-à-face Picasso-Matisse s'installe, bon ben voilà, vous avez les deux monstres face-à-face, et c'est parti pour un demi-siècle.
Matisse was the star of the evening, the man they called master. Leo, Gertrude's brother, had recently acquired his latest masterpiece, The Joy of Life. It was a monumental, highly coloured canvas which defended his harmonious vision. Matisse, being very sure of his art, lectured the young Picasso.
Il faut imaginer que vous avez un Matisse qui est déjà plus âgé que Picasso et qui manie avec beaucoup de dextérité la parole. Donc c'est quelqu'un qui pense, qui est un intellectuel de la peinture et qui donc comme avec Léo Stein, les deux vont étourdir Picasso de théories sur la peinture.
Ce tableau a révolutionné la peinture, mais pas pour Picasso. Picasso a dit on pense que Matisse est le premier des modernes, pas du tout. Matisse est le dernier des classiques. Sous-entendu, le premier des modernes, c'est moi.
Picasso was furious. He was to lash out at Matisse, wanting to defy him.
C'est là qu'il sort dans ce truc en disant « Eh bien moi, je pense que la peinture c'est l'inverse total de ce que fait Matisse. Et d'ailleurs je vais le prouver en faisant le bordel. » Et une américaine lui dit « Mais le bordel, qu'est-ce que c'est ?» Et donc c'est un endroit où il y a des putes.
He wanted to defy Matisse with a painting that was a complete departure, both in its chosen subject and its treatment. He wanted to demonstrate that he was the more creative and modern of the two. For his revolutionary work, Picasso was inspired by what he had just discovered in the Trocadero Museum. African sculptures and masks were exhibited there. He was struck by their magic powers, the deep ancestral feelings that he experienced. He was overwhelmed by their simplicity of form and geometric appearance. Pablo Picasso shut himself in his studio for months in order to produce his monumental work, which would crush Matisse's Joy of Life. He put all his energy into it, banning anyone from entering the studio. And this was the work, the Brothel of Avignon, in memory of his years of debauchery. This painting, which was renamed The Young Ladies of Avignon, is now considered as the starting point of modern art. For the first time, an artist dared to break the vraisemblance by creating a new pictorial universe. The women's faces resemble masks, further developing the principle started with Gertrude Stein. From person to person, the representation differs. Large-rimmed eyes, a nose in profile on a face that's head-on. Angular features, cross-hatching in colours, or deliberately contradictory proportions. Desire and death seem to be mixed together. The painting caused a scandal. Matisse hated it, but Picasso had opened the way for the most important artistic movement of the 20th century, Cubism. Collectors would soon be fighting over his masterpieces. His father died a few years later in 1913, just before his son made his fortune with his paintbrushes and became the most famous artist of the 20th century.